Hey, vinyl community, I can't even talk, community and other listeners. We lost her.
Oh, sorry, I got to keep doing this. We're going to do this. Hold on. Click here.
You know, these technical, logical wizards. Anyway, it's Mazzy here. And this is a continuation of the joint ventures, I'm calling it. By the way, I finally put together a playlist. So if you want to just watch all these joint videos, you can go to my playlist and they're all in one little section. And this one's with Rachel, my biggest fan. She used to be my second biggest fan because John, the digital gramophone, was my biggest fan. And I have no ego whatsoever there. But Rachel, the music ma'am, and also Genealogy Mad, and she'll explain what that's all about. We're going to do something that's sort of based on James Griffiths. This is 10 degrees, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon separation records. I never did that one, but Rachel is actually a professional, I think, genealogist. She'll tell you a little background. There will be a link below to her channel on the vinyl community, so check that out. And we're going to go through things, and of course we're going to. Now, I'm cheating on one of my friends here because I don't do Beatle joint videos except with David Bacon, my co-author. But we're just starting with the Beatles on this one. But so, Rachel, take it away.
Okay, well, hello, vinyl community. Thank you, Mazzy. One thing that happens is that I found out with Mike, Guitar Player 7, who we all love, young guy, just enthusiastic, very knowledgeable. But my screen, I guess it goes to sleep from time to time, and you get a picture of me all excited outside of Abbey Road Studio. So I'm just going to kind of keep wiggling my little mouse here. That's off camera. You can't really tell.
That's what I usually do. I wiggle at my little mouse when it goes to sleep too.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of keeping that going as a constant thing. So yeah, Genealogy Mad, it's my kind of private channel, little family channel. Like Mazzy, I know a bit of your story. I'm adopted too. And so, you know, questions of identity, I'm transgender. So, you know, there's going to be a few identities.
We could have this. Do you know who your father was?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't. Maybe we're related.
You know, I don't Ashkenazi Jew. I mean, I have less than 23% Nazi.
Well, yeah, we won't go there, but okay.
Yeah, well, man, it's incredible. So it's a lot of fun. Yeah, my biological father, deceased in 2004, but I've been reunited with my birth mother, who people that follow my channel were able to see a contest I did. I think it was my first Get to 100 contest or whatever. And so my mom was shaking the hat, and it was just hilarious. But so yeah, genealogy, not a professional, but I've been doing it for quite a long time. And now I'm at the stage now where I've helped a lot of other people find their family and relations. So nice. When James Griffiths came up with this idea, I did the same thing. I kind of dragged my genealogy into it. Because I'm related to Edmund Trevor Lloyd Wynne Williams, and he was chairman of the board and co-founder of the British Gramophone Company, later to become HMV, His Master's Voice, Little Nipper.
Right. Beatle Connection.
Go ahead.
Beatle Connection. HMV.
Very strong Beatle connection. Yeah. And so, I mean, chairman of the board. So he was there from 1899, founded the darn company with an American, interesting, the British company. So he was the money guy, him and all these posh relatives that my own family, my branch, didn't even know about. My grandfather was a Liverpudlian orphan. His dad was a sea captain. He was born in Kulangsu, Amoy, China, because the ships would go for all the tea in China. And my great-grandmother was there with her husband, the sea captain. My grandfather born overseas. The grandfather, my great-grandfather dies, and my great-grandmother is suffering from breast cancer. She fought it for 7 years. And so my grandfather sent off to the Liverpudlian Seamen's Orphanage Institute. And then
so is this gonna be like Roots? There's gonna be 7 parts to it?
You know, it's, what did you call it? It was the Kevin Bacon thing, you know, 6 degrees of separation. Anyway, so through all of that, I got really interested in tracing the history and the genealogy. I found out all this stuff. So
You
yeah,
follow it.
lots of music connections. And we're going to show you a couple more, because sorry to go on so long, but I'll just quickly.
I thought this was part 7 of Roots. Are you related to Kunta Kinte?
I think it's going to go that way if if I keep searching long enough. Of course, that whole out of Africa thing, because we're, you know, the origin of our species.
Yep.
So when I started researching it, got into all this stuff. And so when James did his, I dragged in Maxine Barker, who's like a 4th cousin to me, now deceased, but she introduced Chris Difford and Glenn Tilbrook of Squeeze together. Those 2 guys basically create the band, bring Jules Holland in, and it was my cousin Maxine that gave Jules his nickname. So that's kind of cool. And then the other individual I dragged in there was Tarquin Gotch. And Tarquin Gotch is currently Brian Johnson from AC/DC's manager, but he also managed XTC, did the soundtrack for Home Alone. Yep. And he did musical direction on Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And all
you have
this
a lot
stuff.
of musical connections in your lineage there.
I do, and I'm going to introduce a couple more today.
Okay. All I know through my recent last 2-3 years of my genealogy, apparently I was related to Stonewall Jackson.
Well, you know, the South will rise again, Mask.
Oh God, I had skiltas in my skiltas, and when I heard about that. No offense to you Southerners.
You're getting me verklempt. But okay, so I'm ready to go.
So we're starting off. Rachel's going to start off, and we're going to start off with the same, more or less, album, and we're going to go from there. And it's going to be a record.
Now, can you explain the record? I'm going and I just angle it that way.
We haven't said this to this audience. Rachel lives in Canada, lives in
Sydney, BC.
British Columbia. Not too far from me, but north. I'm in Seattle, Pacific Northwest. This is my copy of Meet the Beatles that I got in February of 1964. So this is 56 years old. And yours is a Canadian version, which is similar. I'm just going to show this for the hell of it, because I have this in my collection from Columbia, a Columbia edition. They're shitty pressings, but I love the cover. And what's great about this, in Spanish, it says, Las Escobas que cantan. And the literal translation that is the brooms that sing. Now, at first I didn't understand what that meant, but of course it means mop tops.
It's mop tops, of
course.
course.
Broom.
Now, I assume you've seen the Australian cover.
I have the Australian. Well, I didn't bring it down for this video, but I do have it.
You got to get Ringo up here. So,
made photographed by Robert
Freeman. So we have the identical album. Mine's just a Canadian. They marketed everything different. And if you look at some of and we won't go too long into the Beatles, but you and David need to get together and explain how the Beatles albums look. They all look like, if you have Japanese Beatle album, like not the Obi strips, but the ones marketed like the EPs, the Beatles look Japanese. If they go to Italy, they look Italian. If they go to France, they look French. You know what I mean? It's all that marketing.
Yep.
But you know this stuff better than me.
We're going to start with this record, and we're going to go back and forth and work our way around and come back. I think we're going to try to come back to the Beatles after 10 albums each. So let's kind of quickly go through that, because we don't have a lot of time for each record. But you go first and see where that takes you.
Okay, so Beatles' first record. I'm pointing to Ringo because my first link is going to be to Ringo's son, Zach. So I'm going to pull the first linkage. So Zach appears with the band Oasis as a drummer on this album. So there's my first link from Ringo to his son Zach, born in 1965, to Maureen, whose maiden name was Cox. And tragically, we lost Maureen early on. She only lived to be about 48 years old, died in Seattle, and where she was being treated for cancer, for leukemia. And so she passed, I think, around 1993 or so.
Okay. Um, I need to take a quick step for one more Beatle thing before I go to my main thing, because I'm going from Meet the Beatles to only a year later, but it seems like eons to Help. And I'm going for this album because this is easier for me to link out for the way I wanted to link out. So again, Mazzy is cheating. So I'm going to the song You Got to Hide Your Love Away, which is a direct influence for the Beatles listening to this album in 1965. This came out in early April, I think, 65. This came out in the summer of 65. John Lennon hears, and the Beatles, they all hear Bob Dylan. And this has Mr. Tambourine Man on it and everything else. But that folky acoustic thing, it's an obvious thing, but if you listen to You Got to Hide Your Away, You Got to Hide Your Love Away, you can totally hear Bob Dylan in that. So my first link is the Beatles to Bob Dylan, not even including that Dylan got the Beatles high for the first time on marijuana.
Fantastic. And of course, John went around during this period of time wearing that little Bob Dylan cap of his.
Yep.
You know, that was there. And John himself is on record as saying that, oh, you know, if you listen to, you know, You've Got to Hide Away, that's me doing Dylan. That's me being Dylan. So he's on record. Okay, so my first link went from Beatlemania to Zach Starkey, who plays drums for Oasis. But on the song, now I've got to grab the box for it. But where did I put that? You know, off gang a glay, Mazzy. Anyway, I don't seem to have the, yes, I do. I sure do.
It's right in front of you.
You got to angle this so it doesn't glare on our friends in the VC. But anyway, there's a song here, this one, The Importance of Being Earnest. So Zach drummed on all of these songs except for Mucky Fingers. So that's the only one Zach didn't appear. Zach never officially joined the band, but he was on this album, and he also did the lion's share of the album Dig Your Soul Out, something like that it's called. I've got it here.
And he tours with The Who.
He did. He's currently The Who's touring drummer. And I think he appeared on their last album that he did. But yeah, this is called Dig Out Your Soul. So, and of course, your take on Oasis is really interesting too, because your love of the Beatles, but you know, they're wankers.
Well, they're personally wankers, but I actually like their records. I get a little, the whole thing, they were so uppity. I mean, they were not huge in America. I feel fortunate because I actually saw Oasis in a club in San Francisco, their first tour called the Bottom of the Hill Club, Potrero Hill, and the club holds a couple hundred people. And it's when their first album came out, but before Wonderwall really started going. I do like them. I watched the documentary on them, and that whole Holier Than Thou were as good as the Beat. You know, that thing bothers me. At least the Davy brothers, they argue and they kind of hate each other to a point, but they're so creative and they're so original. But I like Oasis.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now the thing, of course, have you seen any of Noel's interviews where he's talking? Where like
he's great now.
Freaking hilarious.
Yeah.
And he just laughs. He goes, "Oh, I am the world's greatest, but we were the greatest band." But he doesn't mean it. You can look. There's a twinkle in his eye. And to me, I don't think he buys his own propaganda or bullshit. I think he's too realistic for all that.
One thing I just need to interject your image froze for a while. I could hear all your voice, but you froze. Now you're fine. So I don't know if that's no big deal.
No, it's good. Keep reminding me, or because I'm trying not to look there. It's more interesting if I look at the camera. But so anyway, you're quite right. So anyway, so here's my link. It goes from Beatlemania to Ringo, to his son, Zach. He's drumming on here. But then for the video release of, gotta hold it up again, angle it out, for The Importance of Being Idle, there's an actor that portrays the video and his name is Rhys Evans. Rhys Evans, born Rhys Evans, is a Welsh actor, but he was also the lead vocalist in the early days for Super Furry Animals. Do you have a Super Furry Animals album?
Not with me here, but I have almost all their records. I love them.
Fantastic, because
they're Welsh band from Wales, obviously.
They are.
I like Ruff, the solo records, the lead singer. I have all his solo records too.
This is fantastic. So now you are a Beatles completist. Do you have Liverpool Sound Collage?
I do.
So who's with the
Well,
Liverpool
that's
Sound Collage?
the guys from Super Furry that took the tapes that McCartney gave, and it's really a bizarre little ditty, but it's a fun thing. And in fact, the story of that, I think he was at, I don't know if it was the Q Awards or the Mojo Awards, and they were there. The Super Furries were there, and they met Sir Paul, and I think they ran into him in the bathroom. The story goes, and they talked about and they liked Super Furry remixes and their electronic kind of poppy Beatlesque sounds, and they gave him the tapes and they did that remix thing. I don't think it turned out as great as it could have been, but it's fun. I have the CD of that. Yeah.
So, I mean, so on one level right now, I could have taken a detour and we could have just ended it right there because that Super Furry to McCartney back to Beatlemania.
But I got more too. So
and I got a lot more. So we're going to go the scenic route on this. So by recap, Beatlemania to Ringo Starr to Zach Starkey to Rhys Evans, who appears in the video, The Importance of Being Idle. Okay, you're up.
All right, so I went from Bob Dylan before, right? And on this album is Mr. Tambourine Man. I'm going to Mr. Tambourine Man, 1965, the same year of the debut of the Byrds album, Mr. Tambourine Man. Pioneered and, basically invented folk rock. Folk rock got really popular because of this. They did a couple of Dylan songs on here. Obviously, Roger McGuinn, who was Jim McGuinn then. There's a whole thing in Christianity he was involved with, and he changed his name from Jim to Roger, and David Crosby and Chris Hillman and Michael Clark and Gene Clark, the original Byrds. One of my top 3 favorite bands. So I went from Mr. Tambourine Man to Mr. Tambourine Man here. This album was produced by Terry Melcher, who don't say anything about him yet, but that'll go into my next pick after. And I'll tell more about Terry Melcher.
Okay, so Rhys Evans, who was in the video for Oasis, doing the, okay, how do we put it? He was doing the video for Oasis for The Importance of Being Idle. He starred in this film. I'll angle it off. This is Harry Potter. Oh my gosh, mixed media, Massey. We're going mixed media. This is Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. So just near the end of the series. Now, Rhys Evans plays a character here who's the editor of a newspaper called The Quibbler. Something on that, or I've written it down. Yeah, he plays the character Xenophilius Lovegood. Xenophilius Lovegood. Yeah, I know, it's J.K. Rowling fun. But so he
Steve
plays
Carlson tried to pronounce all these names.
I just saw him do his quarantine thing today. I saw your rock and roll one too. But anyway, so he plays this character in this film. So now we're at Harry Potter. So the last stop off, or the current stop off on my trail from Beatlemania to Ringo, to Zach, to the Oasis, because Zach's in there, to Rhys Evans, and now we're in the movies with Harry Potter.
Don't ask me to name all mine in a row like you did. I'm just gonna go from the last one to this one.
Yeah,
Too much San Francisco psychedelic Grateful Dead concerts.
Well, one comment, as you put it on a thing to me, I just started cracking up on one of our emails. You said, I understood there would be no math.
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, I thought this is too complicated. I don't want any complicated music. Okay. I said this, produced by Terry Melcher. A couple directions I could have gone here. Okay, Terry Melcher produced all those great, wonderful Paul Revere and the Raiders records on Columbia. He was a staff producer, A&R guy. A&R is artist and repertoire that sometimes produces, signs bands, develops bands. A&R was an important thing in most of the record companies for the years. Terry Melcher also was a good friend of Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys, and was sort of involved and could have been the one who was murdered by Charles Manson. So there's that whole Manson family connection. I'm not going to go, I don't have Charlie Manson's record, so I'm not going to go in that direction. But a lot of people out there, somebody's yelling at the screen right now. I know who you're going to say, who his famous mother was. He's the only child of Doris Day. Terry Melcher, Doris Day's son. So I'm going from producer Terry Melcher, who produced The Byrds, a lot of great artists in the 60s, mostly for Columbia Records, to Doris Day.
Perfect.
And we all know, we all love Doris Day and Rock Hudson movies. God, can you imagine what those nights were like?
Yeah, Pillow Talk and The Man Who Knew Too Much, Sera Sera, of course.
And I could have gone, well, we'll see where this goes after that. But now it's over to you.
Yeah, and Terry Melcher was mentioned in, I think Bugliosi did the book Helter Skelter. Of course, you know, it was a massive hit in the 70s. So I remember him from there.
Yeah.
So,
and she just passed away last year. So.
Oh, okay. So no, that I don't recall. So that's interesting. So what I have here is Rhys Ifans. So Rhys Ifans is my my connection to Rhys Ifans. Rhys Ifans is my second cousin.
Wiggle your mouse.
Oh, I got to do it. Hang on. Start the video. God, you know, they can put a man on the moon, or can they? But anyway, so Rhys Ifans is my second cousin. His dad and my mom were first cousins, half first cousins, as it turns out. And so it was bizarre. I was in Wales in 2016. I'm crawling all over these graveyards, and I went to my great-grandmother's house, and I'm all thrilled. And then in hindsight, what it was is I'm actually looking for the actor Rhys Ifans' great-grandmother as well, because we're directly online in the genealogical sense, like we're of the same generation down.
Is there an app to find this stuff up?
It's just, man, I should publish it, you know. Right. But so that's my connection to Rhys Ifans. Well, also in the Harry Potter films. So Rhys Ifans is in Harry Potter. But and there's another link we could have done, because Gary Oldham is also in the Harry Potter films.
I'm going to go with Sid Nancy.
And then he goes to Sid Nancy. That's Joe Orton's story. Joe Orton's doing the screenplay for the Beatles, where they're all having gay sex with one another, which was probably a bit too much for the kiddies in 1966 England. So, but it's a great film. It's called Prick Up Your Ears. I'll just keep holding my Harry Potter up as Mazzy returns to us. Okay, there it is. Joe Orton
was going to be the script, or possibly for the next Beatle movie after Help. Brian Epstein commissioned the great playwright Joe Orton, who wrote What the Butler Saw, and it was pretty kinky, and he did not do it. But there's a great biopic with Alfred Molino and Gary Oldman. And where his lover hacks Joe Orton to death in real life, killed him.
Yeah, horrific. And in the film Prick Up Your Ears, it's shown that way. And of course, Oldham's such a great actor. So I've got Harry Potter here. Now this one's called The Order of the Phoenix. Now in this episode, another actor appears, and this actor's name is Sam Beasley. Sam Beasley is my third cousin once removed. So I have two cousins in there in the Harry Potter. So we've got
everybody.
Well, it's just crazy. And
Dad, I've been looking for you.
You know, and of course, Mazzy, I'm a quarter Native American. So I've got various American and Canadian
American blood. So I can run for president.
Yeah, well,
of the United States.
Yeah, and of course,
you're my second, third Canadian, second Canadian in a row, third Canadian this week, I think.
Wow, you're batting three. Yeah, because you've had.
I think I want to get up there. We're fucked down here. I want to get up there.
Bless you, Mazzy. I love you like crazy. Yeah, it's an interesting time in which we live, my friend.
You get all my Anne Murray records down here. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, Anne Murray connection. You could actually tie her to the Beatles too.
No.
But we won't go there. So Sam Beasley plays an old wizard in this. His name is Professor Everard, and he's in a portrait. And in the plot of the thing, magic dealings occur, and he goes and warns Harry Potter about possible dangers and the like. So Professor Everard, so it goes from Rhys Evans to me, because I formed the bridge to the actor Sam Beasley, my third cousin, once removed. So that's where we are now. And you know, when we're done, we'll just go over this for the poor people at home, or just go.
You can build a tree and we'll put it down.
They'll just go, what the heck planet are you guys?
Like those fucking 8 a.m. classes I used to have in college, the large groups, and the teacher was so dry, we're like falling asleep at 8 a.m.
Yeah, painful. All right, you're up.
Okay. I went Doris Day, greatest hits. Sera is not on here. And I wish it was, because then I would have gone in a different direction. I would have gone with the great cover version of Sera Sera by Sly Stone. Sly Stone used to hang out with Terry Melcher. Sly Stone from Sly and the Family Stone hung out with Charles Manson too. And for a very short time, Doris Day and Sly Stone dated. Now there's a couple right there. That lasted a very short time, but I'm not going.
Oh, I heard that. I just read that somewhere.
But there is a song on here, a great standard, one of the great American songbooks called "Bewitched," "Bewitched, Bewildered," and it's a great song. Now I'm really friggin' stretched in this one here. "Bewitched," it's about a witch. Okay, come on, go with it.
Granted, accepted.
There's a song on this album, the original version, called Black Magic Woman, that most people know the cover of the Santana song, written by Peter Green on this Fleetwood Mac album. Black Magic Woman is about a witch. I know I'm pushing it. It's not but it's a connection.
Bewitched, witch, there's a connection.
Witch, bitch, you know. And actually, when you look at that, it looks almost like Stevie Nicks if she was a nun.
Some sort of Dominican thing going there.
That's an Albatross. There's a song called Albatross, great guitar song. Anyway, I'm going with this album, The Pious Bird of Good Omen by Fleetwood Mac. The British, when they were more of a blues band, this is like a decade almost before the, not quite, before the Stevie Nicks period of Fleetwood Mac. And this album was produced by Mike Vernon, who did a lot of British blues rock albums in the 60s. So the connection is going to be the producer of this album, Mike Vernon, who did all these early Fleetwood Mac. And I'll go with that after you do your next one.
All right. So when last we left Rachie, I was here with Sam Beasley. Now I got another movie. Sam Beasley also appeared in Pride and Prejudice. Of course, this BBC adaptation is what launched the career of Colin Firth. There's a scene where he's in the pond, he comes out. It's a famous, it's one of the most watched scenes in Britain. It was voted one of the great moments in British television history, with Colin Firth and, of course, the see-through soaking wet top and looking all manly and adorable for all the ladies and probably a certain portion of the male.
I love John. I hate John.
So we have Sam Beasley. He appears as the vicar, as the old vicar in this production. And so we're just going to leave it there. So we've got Sam in Harry Potter, but now Sam's over here in Pride and Prejudice. So we'll continue, pick it up after your next installment.
Okay, so I went from Mike Vernon, producer, great British producer, still alive. I think he's mid-70s now, or give or take. Produced this. He produced a lot of British blues rock albums in the late 60s, early 70s too, I think. But I'm going to go by another. This goes to this album, 10 Years After, Undead. And it's also produced by Mike Vernon. And so 10 Years After, Undead, the great Alvin Lee on guitar, who's featured in the movie Woodstock. What a great scene. Blues, rock, great records. And I know, well, anyway, that's all I'm going to say. Mike Vernon, and to this 10 Years After album. And there's a song on this album which will connect to the next one after your choice.
Okay. So back we go. When last we left our episode, we were in Pride and Prejudice, the great BBC production. So my third cousin, one time removed, is in this, was playing Sam Beasley. But also in this movie, and now we're starting to zero in, is a fellow named Crispin Bonham Carter. Now, Crispin Bonham Carter
Must be
plays
related.
Mr. Bingley. And Mr. Bingley is a very good friend of Mr. Darcy.
Is that
played by
Helena's
Colin
father?
Firth. Pardon me?
Is that Helena's father?
No, he is Helena's third cousin, one time removed, just as I am.
How many bottom Carter can there be?
Yeah, but he's from the same family. Indeed, you're correct. It's the Bonham Carter family, and their grandfather, great-grandfather was an industrialist, if I remember correctly. And that's where they made their fortune. So from here now, we're at Crispin Bonham Carter.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm going from, so we had 10 Years After, the Undead, really good album. I love their bluesy, they were a blues rock band. Great. I saw them once at Winterland. Love them. But there is a cover on here, one of the cover songs, which is one of the great American classic songs, and that's the Gershwin tune, Summertime. Summertime, and the living is easy. Fish are jumping, da ba da ba ba. Anyway, we all know the song Summertime. If you don't, I mean, you got Ella Fitzgerald, you got Duke Ellington, you got Louis Armstrong, and you have Janis Joplin, Big Brother, and the Holding Company singing Summertime on Cheap Thrills.
Oh, wow.
Live album is actually not a live album. This is produced by John Simon, who I'm going to take John Simon after this, will be my next one. But great record. They cut in the intro by Bill Graham, who was the Fillmore Auditorium promoter and Winterland and a Fillmore East, Fillmore West. And they put some sound effects like a breaking, sounds like a bottle breaks. And so it gives the illusion of some of this is a live album, but obviously it's not. The great cover art by R. Crumb. I could have gone that direction with the Cheap Suit Serenaders. R. Crumb does a lot of old-timey music, bluesy, banjo, great player, but he got $500 to paint this cover art. So John Simon, the producer of Cheap Thrills by Big Brother and the Holding Company from 1968.
Excellent. And what an album. You know, my first encounter, you're showing the gatefold for it?
Keep going, you can talk.
Because I remember as a kid, like I'm 4 years younger than you. So 1968, Marvel, maybe it was 68, 69, they showed that album cover, but they turned it into superheroes for a brand they called, or a title they had called Not Brand X, which was Stan Lee's kind of shot at a rival company, Detective Comics, which is Batman and Superman and all that crowd. Again, Jewish input there with Joe Simon and I forget who Schuster was, Joe Schuster and
Simon and Schuster, the publishers.
Yeah, was that who they are? I'm not sure.
Well, they started the publishing at Simon and Schuster, the big New York publishing company.
I don't know.
Basically, the Jews owned everything. If you watch my video with Greg from LA.
That's why I bring it up, because you just did a great piece on just the impact of Jewish culture in our music,
yes.
But also in comic books, same way. A lot of great Jewish, New York out of that, New York Jewish population. He's got Jack Kirby, my favorite. And of course, Kirby changed his last name, but I digress. Okay, so here we are.
Yeah. Change your life.
Pride and Prejudice. We got, we've just introduced our latest character, which was Crispin Carter. What's the last name? Bonham Carter. Crispin Bonham Carter. Well, he is, as you say, related to Helena Bonham Carter. Now, she stars with, I just got to look over here all the time. She stars with Johnny Depp in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Where you going with this, baby?
I know you know where I'm going. And
Johnny Depp.
This is going to go right to this character with the little top hat. And of course, Helena Bonham Carter and Johnny Depp did a lot of films together. I think they went in Sleepy Hollow, for example.
That's because Tim Burton was dating her, Bonham Carter.
Well, and I guess they're all close friends, so it's a
All
bit
his
like,
movies, and Johnny Depp was a lot of his movies. Yeah.
yeah, it's like Wes Anderson, where he brings all his pals in. You'll see Bill Murray, a cast of frequent repeat characters in the cast from A Mighty Wind and Best in Show, and that comedic group, which they do a lot of
For
stuff
guest, I
together.
love all that stuff.
Yeah, so from Pride and Prejudice, it's because of Crispin Bonham Carter, who connects to Helena Bonham Carter, his third cousin, one time removed, and then she in turn connects to Johnny Depp.
You didn't tell me you were going to do movies. That's kind of a whole nother level there, but that's okay.
Well,
You know,
hey, I'm a bit of a rule breaker myself, Matt.
Okay, are we there now? So
You're up.
okay. So I said John Simon produced this record. John Simon, in fact, one of my very early videos, I did a profile on John Simon, on his music, his productions. He produced Leonard Cohen, this, and one of my favorite albums that I just showed in one of the videos, was it the quarantine one? Maybe it was a quarantine 2020, about the second album that's better than the first album by an artist.
Yeah.
And that's the second band album. Obviously, we all love, or those of us who like the band, like music from Big Pink. This is the second album produced by John Simon, which is their self-titled album. I think it's the better of the two. This is produced by the great John Simon, producing the band, and wonderful records. Cross the Great Divide, Rag Mama Rang, The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down, Up on Cripple Creek. So a lot of, it's almost a best of if you like this kind of music and if you like the band. So I'm going to take it after this I have one more that'll bring us back around after this, but the second self-titled band album.
Now, as soon as you show the band, I myself could take it to the end, because I know a bit. I went to a concert, and there was a connection there. So I'm going to leave it for you to unveil, but there is that. So when last we left, we had Charlie and Chaga, so Helena Bonham Carter to Johnny Depp. Now, Johnny Depp brings us kind of back to Oasis in a way. He actually plays on this, and I'm going to read.
Johnny Depp does?
Pardon me?
Johnny Depp plays on that?
Johnny Depp plays on this.
Wow.
And he plays on a song called Fade In and Fade Out, or Fade In Out. And I'll just read it. It's very short. Just says, the first part of Fade In Out was recorded in a little effing shack on the beach in Mustique with Johnny Depp. We were drunk one night, and I borrowed his slide guitar and tried to play this solo, and it was absolutely dreadful. So he sat down and played it and got it in one take. He's actually a really good guitar player. Noel Gallagher, 1997, Rolling Stone. Okay, so, but that doesn't bring, I mean, it does connect him to Zach Starkey, but we want to have some fun and stretch this out a bit.
We do?
So, well, a little bit further, because, you know, I don't want to, I'm just out of screen here. I got to go down and grab some records. I know, it's like the cosmic realm. So Johnny Depp, of course, Massey, we're losing Massey. Johnny Depp is in a group called the Hollywood Vampires. This is a really fascinating kind of group, and I'll do a review on this separately. This is their second album, released last year.
Is Alice Cooper in that?
Alice Cooper is in this. He's really the driving force of it. But of course, the Hollywood Vampires, I mean, we can immediately go from there, because John Lennon was kind of an honorary member back in the day of the band.
Keith Moon and Harry Nilsson and
yeah, you know, and of course
all those drunkards.
Yeah, it was a big drinking party group. You know, old boys party club, and of course they all drank to excess. Ringo was a member of it, and you know, Ringo was a well-known, well-advertised alcoholic, and you know, because he was part of this thing. And one of the rules was, to become a new member, you had to outdrink one of the current members under the table, essentially.
And so, John Lennon was a bad drunk, unfortunately.
Oh, no, Elliot Mintz. Drunk,
I should say.
Did you know the Elliot Mintz story? He's got a quote where he says, John Lennon would have a kind of some sherry or a brandy, and after one brandy, he'd start to loosen up, and And then after 2 brandies, he'd be charming and tell a story or 2. And after 3 brandies, he'd start to snarl.
Yeah.
And then it would, and things would go down there. And of course, the famous thing, you know all this stuff.
Kotex on the head in the LA club and all. Yeah, yeah.
Tommy Smothers.
I've told that on one of my videos, I think, somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's a classic. So to recap briefly where we are now, we're at the Hollywood Vampires with Johnny Depp, who's a member of this band. The 3 core characters are Joe Perry from Aerosmith, Alice Cooper, and Johnny Depp. And then they have some other characters that come in and other musicians that fill out the roster as needed.
Okay, I'm coming down to my end. This is my end bit, pretty much, except obviously this. Now, I could have gone to the Last Waltz because I went to the Last Waltz at Winterland. I'm not doing the Last Waltz. Ringo appears at the Last Waltz in 1976 Winterland with all those great musicians. Great movie if you haven't seen it by Scorsese.
I have.
I'm going with the Ringo album because this is probably one of the best of the solo albums. It's the closest, in a way, to a Beatle reunion. 3 out of 4 Beatles are on I'm the Greatest. But there's a song on here called Sunshine Life for Me. Sunshine Life for Me, Sail Away Raymond, a song written by George Harrison, especially for Ringo. And the backup band is the band. So we got Ringo on drums. We got Robbie Robertson from the band, Levon Helm, Rick Danko, Garth Hudson. We also have David Bromberg, who's I'm a big fan of and I've featured, and Klaus Vormann. But most of the band backs up Ringo on here. So we go from John Simon's produced the band's second album to Ringo's first pop rock album. He had 2 solo albums prior to this, the big band album, and he had the cover big band album, and he had the blues, Buku's a Blues, the country album from Nashville. So, and obviously Ringo brings me back to the Beatles. I didn't put on another Beatle album, so this brings me back to those Fab 4 Broomstick Boys, the Beatles, those Beatles.
So of course, I'm going to show this. Ringo and his all-star band, the group I saw. I've got some newspaper clippings here that I'll put to the side.
Newspaper clippings appear on the shore, waiting to take you away.
Oh, poetry, pure poetry. Recognize any of these characters?
Levon Helm, and from Springsteen, and Neil Young is the guy at the bottom right. That's Nils Lofgren. Right? Nils Lofgren, Jim Keltner, Joe Walsh, Dr. John,
Jim Keltner, Dr. John,
Billy Preston,
Joe Walsh,
and Rick
Billy
Danko.
Preston.
Is that Rick Danko on the top right?
Rick Danko. What band is he in? The band.
The band.
Yeah. So here's the band again. So this was a wonderful concert. It was just astounding. It was one of the best I've ever seen.
3 of the tours. I saw that tour.
Oh, and I'm telling you, I've seen McCartney play, and I got to tell you, I enjoyed the Ringo concert more. So I'm on record. There you go, Beatle fans. Okay, so we're at the Hollywood Vampires with Johnny Depp. So this is the second album, the first album, but there also Bob Ezrin music is here. And we can do it 2 ways. We can go through Bob Ezrin, who produced Alice Cooper and Billion Dollar Babies, who featured Donovan on the song Billion Dollar Babies.
And he produced Pink Floyd, The Wall.
He also produced The Wall. So we could also go through David Gilmour and then with McCartney. But we can also go through Joe Perry and Aerosmith. So because my sister is such a big fan, we're going to go from Bob Ezrin, or we're going to go from Joe Perry, I guess, here, because he's in the Hollywood Vampires, to Bob Ezrin. Bob Ezrin, as you said, produced Pink Floyd. So he did The Wall, which I've got on disc, but because it's vinyl and I have more CDs and mixed media, I worked really hard to get these records out.
Beautiful.
So
cover.
Here we have Pink Floyd, The Division Bell.
Yeah.
Saw this tour, fantastic. That's where I tell people that know my channel, I did a thing called Floyded. Now, so this leads us to Bob Ezrin. Bob Ezrin leads us to a guy named Norman Hurricane Smith, who engineered, who produced the first Pink Floyd album, Gates, at the Piper at the Gates of Dawn. With
That's really funny because I almost went in the direction through Capitol Records to Pink Floyd's Adam Hart Mother, produced by Norman Smith.
Right. So Norman Smith is my connection. Norman Smith produces Pink Floyd's early stuff. The first two albums, skips the third, and then he's back in play for the fourth album, if I got that sequence down right. Now we're at Norman Smith. Well, Norman Smith, who produced the Pink Floyd album, engineered this album. So now I think what we should do, well, I got a couple extra little goodies for you.
I'm not going to go through mine again. So
No, you don't have to. It's very quick because you ran it. But,
I love that.
Okay, fantastic film.
Handmade films.
Yeah, so Richard Griffiths, who plays a character called Vernon Dursley, which is Harry Potter's uncle, evil, kind of the nasty, evil stepmother idea, right? So, but he plays Uncle Monty in with Nell and I, and of course that performance is Uncle Monty. And of course this is a handmade film. Handmade films run by George Harrison.
And the actor in that, one of the actors, the one on the left, or the one on no, not Richard, the other one.
That's Paul McGann.
He plays John Lennon in a movie, or
Backbeat. Was he in Backbeat?
No, he plays the Beatles in one of the movies. Plus, in the soundtrack of that, which I have, While Micah Gently Weeps is in the soundtrack, the Beatle version.
Yeah, very rare. And the licensing, but because when you get George Harrison being your executive producer, strings can be pulled.
Yeah. It's a good movie. It's really a good movie.
So, well, it's just a class. And I thought you'd like, because I know you enjoy film. You're a bit of a Renaissance man, my friend. And so here it is, Beatlemania. We're back to the one.
Those wacky mop top broom sweepers.
The broom sweepers. Yeah.
We swept our way 10 folds, give or take, with our friend Rachel, my friend Rachel, the genealogist. And we're going to do more of these as time goes on. But this is my, again, oh, Canada, we like your flag, oh, Canada, what's in your bag? I don't know the song.
It works for me.
Anyway, thanks, Rachel, for doing this. And thank you, vinyl community and others. Watch James Griffiths' thing. This is sort of, at least from my point of view, influenced by him. And also Rachel's talent and her entire family. I have no idea who my family is. So I don't know, except I'm only 23% Jewish, and I'm from the South, but born in San Francisco.
I got to tell you, you're like around 23%.
23.
Yeah, I'm telling you, that means that you're like at your great grandmother level. We're talking pure blood Ashkenazi Jew.
On my father's side. So, and the thing is, when I first got this results, I was 22%. A year and a half later, I'm 23%. So at this rate, by 2075, I'll be about 89% Jewish.
You're getting there.
Okay, I'm going to sign off now. Thank you, Rachel. This will be up in a few hours. Well, I don't have to tell you that because if you're watching this, it's already up.
Oh, man.
Anyway, thank you so much.
Love you, Mazzy. Thank you so much for this. Thank you, James Griffiths. And thank you, Vinyl.
Mazzy loves you. Bye.